Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to go ahead and post the notes for you so that you didn't miss out just because we're out of school physically. So what I'd like you to do is to pull out some paper or your notebook, pencil, pen, something to write on, something to write with, and just pretend you're in class and take notes just like you normally would. So the heading for this lesson is More About Volume of a Cylinder. And just as I go through this, one thing I should mention as well is that, at any point, if you need to pause and write things down or work on problems, please do that. So don't just watch the video and listen to me talk for, 10, 20 minutes. You're just going to be bored out of your mind. So just make sure that on the problems, you pause, take your time, work them out on your own, and then come back and see how you did from there. Okay. All right. So again, the heading, more about volume of a cylinder, and I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. All right. This would be something like your I can statement. And it's really the same I can statement that we had last time. And the idea is, how do we find volume? So if you remember, there's a difference between something like volume, 3-dimensional, and something like area, which is 2-dimensional. So remember, for volume, you're finding how much space that a shape, a 3D object, is taking up. And so when you find volume, just remember that you're multiplying three things together. For example, if it's a rectangular prism, you'd be multiplying the length, the width, and the height. However, of course, we're not talking about rectangular prisms. Really, we're talking about cylinders. So this is a problem that I'm going to do for you. Just follow along and, again, pause to make sure you take whatever notes you need. So this problem says that Tanya uses cube-shaped beads to make jewelry. Each bead has a circular hole through the middle. So if we look here, here's that shape. That would be the bead. And right through the middle of it, there's that little circular hole. So that hole might be like she's got to put a string through it to put the beads together to make her necklace, or whatever it might be. And it says to find the volume of each of the beads. So what it wants you to do is it wants you to find the volume of the whole shape, right? So first of all, you're going to realize, okay, well, down here it says, okay, well, it's 12 millimeters. Here's 12 millimeters. And it's a circle is here. You see that word cube. So we know that this right here, this is also going to be 12 millimeters. So in a cube, just kind of like a rectangular prism, it's length times width times height to find the volume. So I'm going to write this. The volume of this cube, and pardon my handwriting, I'm trying to write on my laptop screen, but the volume of the cube is going to be the same as length times width times height, or it's going to be 12 times 12 times another 12. So you can do this in a calculator if you need to, but just believe me. But 12 times 12 times 12, that's going to be 1,728. Remember, that's not the final answer. You've got to put the units, so it says millimeters. So I'm going to write millimeters, and remember, because it's volume, I multiplied three things together, so my exponent is going to be a 3. And if you remember, the way you read that is a little bit backwards, but it's 1,728 cubic, that's the 3, cubic millimeters. So that's the volume of the bead. But that's not the actual final and correct answer, because that would be the bead if all I had was a plain old regular bead. But now notice there's a hole that goes through the middle, right? So that hole, that's not there. So what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to subtract that. So you're going to take the bead and you're going to subtract out that hole that goes through the middle. Now that hole, and let me just sketch it real quick over here. That hole, if you see, is kind of sort of in the shape of a cylinder. Well, okay, I can't draw on the screen, but it is a cylinder. And the only piece of information they give you is if you were to zoom in on this part right here, they tell you that measurement right there is 2 millimeters. And again, that's right up here where they give that to you. And if you look carefully, that 2 millimeters is all the way across the circle. So long story short, what you're going to do is you're going to find the volume of the cylinder using that information, the fact that all the way across is 2 millimeters. You're going to subtract it from the cube, and that'll be your answer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to find the volume of the cylinder. And if you remember the formula, it's in your notes. And remember, you need to memorize it if you don't have it already. It's pi r squared h. So if you remember the steps, that would be step number 1. Write down the formula. I'll just put a little 1 there as step number 1. Step number 2, if you'll remember from the last time we saw each other, was you're going to plug things in, right? So for example, the pi, is 3.14. Radius, I'm actually going to put in 1. It's going to be 1 squared. Now, let me remind you that the reason the radius is 1 is that the radius is only halfway across the circle, halfway across the base. And the 2 that they give us is all the way across. And remember, if they give us all the way across, we need to divide that in half. So half of 2 is 1. That's why I'm plugging in 1 for the r. And of course, it's r squared, so it has the exponent of 2. And then the height, even though it's not on the cylinder, I know that the cylinder goes all the way through the cube, and when the cube has a height of 12 millimeters, so it's going to be the same height for the cylinder. So this is literally 3.14 times 1 times 1, and remember, you got to multiply it twice because of that exponent, times 12. So go ahead and get out a calculator. You can use your phone, obviously. I mean, you're at home, so you're going to do 3.14 times 1 times 1. That's not going to change anything. And then times 12, and you should get 37 point, what's a point? Sorry, my pen's acting up. 37.68. It's going to be 37.68 cubic millimeters. 37.8 cubic millimeters. Now, one thing you're going to want to be careful with this is I'm not actually going to circle that as my final answer because, remember, we always want to round based on significant digits. This is something that you cover with Ms. Dudley in your science class. You want to look at the original problem and see how many decimal places it had, and you want to go with the least number of decimal places, right? So we see here, this number here, it has 2 decimal places, but this number only has 1, this number only has 1. Which one's the least number? 1, right? So 1's less than 2. So I only want to go, sorry, I said 1, I'm misspeaking. When I say 1, I mean 0 because there is no number after it. So I don't want any decimal places to be after this. So my final answer is actually going to be 38 cubic millimeters. And now you might be saying, well, Mr. Hossein, but it says 37. But remember, the next number here, that's a 6. So 5 and over, you round up. So that's my final answer is going to be 38 because I round up. 38 cubic millimeters. All right, so that was a relatively difficult problem, but this one right here is a little bit simpler. So go ahead and pause the video for me real quick, because what I'd like you to do is I want you to try this problem on your own. I want you to try finding the volume of the cylinder on your own. Just make sure that you show all the steps, because that's how you're going to get credit for it when we get back to school, right? So pause the video, and let's do that. All right, so I'm going to assume you paused the video, and now I'm just going to go ahead and work it out. Let's see if you got the right answer. So this is going to be the volume of a cylinder, again, because it's the shape of a cylinder. That's going to equal pi times r squared times h. That's my step number 1. Step number 2, I'm going to plug everything in, and instead of pi, I'm going to get 3.14. My radius is 5 squared. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Mr. Hossein, it already gives you 5. You got to cut it in half. But remember, it's already giving you halfway across the base, halfway across the circle. The only time you cut it in half is if it gives you all the way across. So in this example, I did not need to cut it in half. And then my height is 8.3. So again, I'm going to pull out my calculator. I'm going to do 3.14 times 5 times 5 times 8.3. And I'm going to get 651.55, and the unit is in cubic centimeters, but that's not my answer because I see that I don't have anything as far as decimals. So this has 2 decimal places, this has 1 decimal place, this has no decimal places. So I'm going to round it so it has no decimal places, and I'm going to get 652 centimeters cubed, or the way I should say it, cubic centimeters. Now, if you're paying really close attention, you're going to realize that, wait a minute, that shouldn't be what I have. That shouldn't be what I put. I should have actually put something different. So those of you seeing that or noticing that, you read the question, right? So let me go back up here. Look at the question. This says round to the nearest tenth. So on your FSA, you want to be careful with that, right? So if there are no instructions on your FSA, that's when you do significant digits, meaning you round to the least number of decimal places from your original problem. And that would be answer, 652. But this problem specifically says to go to the nearest tenth. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cross this out because instead I want to round to this decimal place right here. So my final answer is going to be 651.6 cubic centimeters. Now again, Why is that a 6 and not a 5? Because the very next number is 5 or greater. So I'm going to round this up, and that's my final answer. Let me just say real quick, if you're having a little bit of difficulty understanding the rounding, or where that's all coming from, just do me a favor, go to khanacademy.org, and in the search bar, you don't have to do this like in your Google account or anything. It's not going to be a separate assignment that you have to do, but if this is something you're struggling with understanding, just go to khanacademy.org and type in rounding or type in significant digits and watch a video, do a couple practice problems, and I promise you it'll come right back to you. You've done it a million times before. It's something you already know how to do. You might have just forgotten it real quick. All right, so this was like a word problem, right? And so again, I'm going to want you to pause the video, but otherwise we're going to work it out. And I'm going to show you how I do the problem, assuming that you've already done it yourself, so we can match our answers together. So you can pause the video if you need to. So this problem says to find the volume of a cylinder. So, this is my very fancy, I could be Picasso, cylinder. And it says that the diameter is 16. Now that's a good word right there, right? Diameter. Diameter means all the way across. So all the way across is going to be 16. And it says that the height, so that's this way, that's 20 inches. Let me actually put a little IN, and I'm going to squeeze that in there. It's inches. And it wants me to find the volume, and I'm going to do it properly this time to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to work this out. I'm going to write my steps. So the volume of my cylinder is equal to pi r squared h. And then I'm going to start plugging things in. So there's my pi, 3.14. My radius, I'm actually going to plug in 8. If you're paying attention, you know it's 8 because, again, I only want halfway across. The whole thing is 16. Half of 16 is 8. And remember, if you don't remember how to do that, it's literally just dividing in 2, right? So 16 divided by 2 is how I get the 8. And then over here, the height is 20. So nice, easy, simple problem. Doesn't take more than a couple seconds to do. 3.14 times 8 times 8 times 20. And I'm going to get 4,019.2. Good news, it's already rounded to the nearest tenth, so there's nothing I need to do with that other than put the units on it, and that's going to be cubic inches. And that's going to be my answer right there. All right. Next problem says that a metal paperweight is in the shape of a cylinder. So obviously, again, we're doing cylinders. I'm just going to sketch myself a quick cylinder. That's definitely a cylinder. And it says that the height is 1.5 inches. I'm going to write 1.5 inches. And it has a diameter of 2 inches. So obviously, this is not to scale because it should be wider than taller. But, bear with me. So that's 2 inches that way. How much does it weigh if 1 cubic inch weighs 1.8 ounces? Now, this is an interesting problem, right? So, first of all, I'm definitely going to need to find volume. I mean, that's what I've been doing this whole time, and it specifically says that I'm going to be finding my answer in cubic inches at first, right? So let's just go ahead and do that real quick. This is a different type of problem than we've done before, but it's the kind of problem you see often in Mathia, and I've seen this problem in iReady before too, right? So I'm going to work this out with you. So the volume of my cylinder, again, pi r squared h. I'm going to plug in 3.14. My radius is going to be 1 because that's half of 2. And then my height is 1.5. So pull out your calculator again, and I'm going to get 3.14 times 1 times 1 times 1.5. And I'm going to find out that that's going to be 4.7 cubic inches. Now, if you're following along and actually doing the problem like you should be doing, you'll be going Mr. Hossein, but the answer in my calculator says 4.71. But remember, nearest tenth, so I'm going to stop at that first decimal place and round down because the 1, 4.71, is less than 5. So my answer is 4.7 cubic inches. But now it says how much does it weigh, right? So how much does it weigh is what I want to know. And I know that every single cubic inch weighs 1.8 ounces. So now this is kind of fun, I think. So literally all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 4.7 and I'm going to multiply by 1.8. And that's kind of conversion. That's called a unit conversion. So when I multiply this, my final answer is going to be in ounces. So basically what I have is I have 4.7 times 1.8. That's going to give me 8.46. But again, now I'm going to have to round up because that 6 is bigger than 5 or 5 or greater. So this is going to be 8.5, and that's going to be ounces. So OZ stands for ounces. So that's how much it weighs. So this would be the volume, 4.7 cubic inches, but after I multiply, I know that that's how big it is, but down here, that's how much it's going to weigh, which is what I need to do. All right, and last problem, go ahead and work this one out on your own. Yeah, you're probably going to recognize this if you were paying attention last class. This is actually the problem from the exit ticket. So go ahead and work this out again. I'm not going to post the answer on here. Next week, what you're going to see is that I'm going to ask you to do all the exit tickets showing your work. So you'll have a redo at this. So just go ahead and for your own practice, make sure you remember how to do this type of problem. All right, and that's it. Next time I post a lesson, this will be the heading, word problems with volume of a cylinder, and I'll try to post this by this Wednesday, the 18th of March. All right, have a great day, everybody.